after we get off the phone, we're both just like, oh my gosh, like we have all this energy and we're just excited about life. We're not like, oh my goodness, I have to go take a nap, or I just gotta like veg out in front of the TV because I can't even think anymore, or whatever it is when you feel drained.
So find a way to
Hello, beautiful souls. Welcome back to the Lightworker community. My name is Monica, and in today's video, we're going to be talking about who is your soul family and how to recognize them when you meet them. So this topic has been on my mind recently because not too long ago, I had posted on my Instagram about soul families. And I'm going to read you what I posted because I think it's a very good definition. The post I shared defines soul family as those who gather around you based on energy and essence, not on blood, race, or status. They bring you unconditional love and support when you need it most and share the same energetic vibration. You come together as one. So after I had posted this, I realized that I have been in contact with all the members of my personal soul family in between the time I posted it, which was maybe like a week or so ago, and today. Family was always kind of a sensitive topic for me growing up, as I always felt like I kind of grew up without a family. I grew up with my mom, so I did have a family member, and I love my mom. However, I still felt like I was missing out because all of my friends and peers and classmates seemed to have had, both parents, or at least if they were divorced, they knew their dad. I never met my dad. My mom tried very hard and successfully to keep me away from my dad because, as far as I know, he's not a very nice person. I really don't know all the details about it. And then I also didn't grow up with any brothers or sisters, cousins, aunts, uncles. Like, I didn't know any of my family. And my mom was in foster care, I think, for a lot of her life. And she didn't know her biological family either. So I have a very unclear family tree, to say the least. And to this day, I have still never met any of the other members of my biological family except for my mom. I have talked to my dad and like a half brother and some aunts, I believe. And like years and years ago, I went searching for them online, and I actually found my half brother through MySpace at the time. I had searched my last name and I just picked the first person I thought that maybe looked kind of similar to me. And I asked him something like, hey, are you related to so-and-so, my mom's name? And then he responded back saying, are you Monica? Is your mom, and then he knew all these kind of like details about me. And I couldn't believe it. I was like, oh my goodness, it was that easy. The first try I found my family. So for a long time I had this longing of wanting to know my family and have one, especially because I've had very low points in my life where I felt very isolated and very lonely, and having a family was the kind of connection that I was craving. Trying to make a long story short, I did attempt to meet my dad in person. He lives in Chicago, and this was maybe a couple years back. My husband had a work conference thing there, and it was pretty close to where he lived. I think he actually lived in Indiana, but it was really, really close to where we were. And I had called him and said, hey, I'm here. Do you want to meet me? And he didn't say no outright, but basically he made it sound like he couldn't meet up with me even though he wasn't doing anything. So at that point, I had decided to stop trying to pursue my family. I have an online presence. It's really easy to find me with my name. If my family wanted to find me, they would have found me. So for me, it was a blessing in disguise. I'm actually very grateful that I don't have contact with that side of the family. I don't know, again, like I said, I don't know all the details of what happened in the past, but it doesn't sound good. And even talking on the phone, I didn't really feel a connection with them at all. It was very forced, it felt like, and a lot of awkward pauses and silences, to say the least. Over the years, I have definitely been with people who felt like family to me. I would spend a lot of time at their houses. I practically lived there. Their parents were like my parents. I have another person in my life I always call my second mom. She's been in my life since I was 16 when I left home. I no longer have contact with my mom. That's a long story. But basically, I do have people that feel like family, but it's different from a soul family. I had heard the term and didn't really know what it meant exactly, but when it happened, I just knew. And that's how I feel. I feel like when you meet a member of your soul family, you just know automatically. It's like when people ask you, well, how do you know that person's the one you want to marry or you want to be with? You're like, I just know. Your soul family are basically soulmates. And soulmates is not always a romantic relationship. You can have soulmates that are friends. You can even have soulmates that are family. And I believe that's why some family members just like click so well together. They mesh, they're best friends. They hang out not because they feel obligated to at family events and holidays. They genuinely want to hang out. And I've always admired that dynamic in some families. I didn't quite understand like why some people just really got along and meshed well together and others just seemed to be polar opposites and didn't want anything to do with each other. I feel like this is especially true with twins. The twins are definitely soulmates. Maybe not all twins, of course, but I think a lot of twins seem to be very close and best friends, and they are very empathic with each other and can kind of sense what the other person is feeling or thinking. I personally have 4 people in my soul family that I have found so far. I don't know how many there are total. That part doesn't really matter to me, but I know I will recognize them in the future when I meet them. The first person that's probably the most obvious is my husband. My husband is definitely one of my soulmates, and I felt that before I even knew what a soul family was. Another person is someone that I was actually friends with years and years ago in my teen years. I think I met her when I was around 15 or so, and we had met through a mutual friend, and her and I only really hung out when our other friend, our mutual friend, was there. So when it was always the 3 of us, or it was the 2 of them, or me and the other friend, so the 2 of us. And I don't think either of us really felt a connection when we first met. When we were alone, we didn't really talk a lot or really have much to talk about. And it's funny to look back and now realize that she has become a member of my soul family. And everyone I've expressed this to, where I'm like, hey, I feel like you're part of my soul family, they've said that they felt the same way. We got back in contact like 7 years after like the last time we'd seen each other, and I feel like it was divinely orchestrated through the universe because I had just awakened and I never go on Facebook, but for whatever reason I got a message from someone else on Facebook, and then that message allowed me to see that she had messaged me like 7 years prior saying something like, I had seen you across the street when you were at a restaurant and I wasn't able to say hi, just wondering how you were doing, that sort of thing. And normally I don't think I would have responded to a message that old, and even my mind was telling me this person may not even use Facebook anymore and I don't get what the point is. Like, I don't live in New Mexico anymore where we met. I live in Oregon now. Who knows where she lives? But I decided to respond, and I was like, hey, sorry, this message is like 7 years late. For whatever reason, Facebook would not let me see this message until now. And she actually responded, I want to say either the same day or the next day, and she was like, Monica, oh my goodness. And she had seen like my old YouTube channel and my Instagram, and we had all this stuff in common, and she was like, I saw that you're vegan. I'm vegan too. And then she was like, you're married. I'm married too. We just had all of these things in common, and the more we were finding out, we were like, oh my goodness, this is crazy how much we're like in sync. I had this feeling that she may be awakened or know about some of the stuff, and I had asked her in a message like, do you know anything about like chakras and crystals and something else I had said? And she's like, chakras, crystals, you're speaking my language. So she was the first person I had known after my spiritual awakening and had been like a mentor to me, and we had talked pretty consistently for like a couple years, I want to say, and then we lost contact for a couple years, And we just recently, I think of last year, got back into contact, and now we have these super long text messages that we send. Sometimes it takes us a day or two to respond. And we usually have a phone call once or twice a month. And these phone calls, I kid you not, are literally like 5 to 6 hours. And this was even after the initial call we had after losing contact and catching up, and both catching up for those 2 years. We still talk for hours and hours, and it feels like we could just talk forever. And I'm not going to go into detail about all four, but I will mention something about the third person is I have never met them in person. We've only been talking online, and we've been talking online a lot over the last few years. She had actually sent me a message about something I'd posted, and then we have these long, like you have to scroll messages we send through DMs on Instagram. And we talk off and on. It's not always consistent, but we both said that when we read each other's messages, we feel like this kind of like energy portal between the two of us, and we just feel so happy. So I do believe that you can also have a member of your soul family that you haven't physically met in person. All right, now that I've given you a background as to my personal experience with family and soul families, let's get into how to recognize your soul family when you meet them. I wrote down 7 examples, and this is from my own personal experience, my own way of detecting soulmates. It's not something I've researched at all, so I don't really consider this right or wrong, but maybe some of these attributes will resonate with you, and then you can determine as well who your soul family is. The first one is an overwhelming sense of trust when you first meet them. I can be kind of a reserved person when I meet people. I don't really open up before I can trust them with personal things that are going on with me. My husband was the first member of my soul family that I met. We had met online, started talking. He picked me up for our first date, and I didn't feel nervous at all. Like, I got in his car, didn't know him, but intuitively I felt like I could trust him. And not just trust him like from physically harming me, but also trusting him with my heart and my emotions, and even trusting to tell him all of the dark things that have happened in my past. And I felt that sense of trust obviously online, otherwise I wouldn't have met him, but it was very, very strong in person as well. I believe strongly that our intuition can pick up on other people's intentions, especially if you're an empath or highly sensitive to energies. So I definitely recommend listening to that, or if you're not in touch with it, set the intention to get more in touch with your intuition and your empathic abilities. The second way is you feel like you've known them forever. This is exactly how I felt when I met my husband. It was this sense of familiarity. Like, I know we haven't met before now, but I feel like I already know you. And not because we had like super in-depth talks about like the world or our dreams or anything like that. We actually didn't get too deep into conversation online, but I did feel like I'd known him forever when we did start talking in person, even if it wasn't anything that was particularly deep at the time. And I believe the reason for this is because our soul family is souls or people from other lifetimes. People that we've maybe known when we were hanging out in Source before we came down to incarnate on Earth, or maybe you were together on different planets. And it's a connection that you've had for, goodness, who knows how long, like eons or something. And you have these maybe soul contracts to come back into each other's life time after time after time. The third way is you immediately feel comfortable around them. Like you can just totally be yourself. I have felt this way with each member of my soul family. I don't usually talk a lot when I first meet people, depending on the person. I usually like to listen instead. I like to listen, and I like to get to know other people and their experiences and what they've been through. Many times I've told myself that my life is not that interesting, so I don't really need to talk too much about it. But also I think that's part of the being reserved and not wanting to open up yet. But with the members of my soul family, I just, like, you can't get me to shut up. Like, I just feel so comfortable, especially from, I think, listening so much and to other people and holding so much in for years that I finally feel like, oh my goodness, I'm so comfortable. I could be myself. I can let my hair down. I'm gonna take my shoes off, and we're just gonna chill. You know, I feel like I'm at home, and that's another thing, is that soul family feels like home, in a sense. Not maybe necessarily the home you had when you were growing up, like your childhood home, but more of like you really sense that they're a part of you, that they are a part of your soul. We are all connected, but everyone is on a different conscious level and a different vibration and a different level of remembering who they actually are. Because once people start to remember who they are and they get together, they click more on a vibrational and spiritual level, and not only physical or emotional or mental, but those are, you know, key components too, of course, but it goes even beyond that. Number 4 is being around them, or even just talking to them, whether it be over the phone or over email or something. It energizes you. There are a lot of people and a lot of things in life that are just energy drainers. They're energy vampires. And that typically happens if you're on a pretty, you know, it actually doesn't even matter what vibration you're on, but we'll just say you're a pretty high vibration and you interact with energies that are a lot lower on the consciousness scale. And being around the lower vibrations, especially if you're empathic, it just drains you. It takes so much energy. Also with introverts, and that's why we have to go be alone and recharge, especially after a draining experience. However, with your soul family, it's the complete opposite. When you're around them, it feels like your battery just got supercharged. No matter how long you've been talking to them or hanging out with them. Like I said before, one of my soul family members, I said we spend like 5 to 6 hours on the phone. And after we get off the phone, we're both just like, oh my gosh, like we have all this energy and we're just excited about life. We're not like, oh my goodness, I have to go take a nap, or I just gotta like veg out in front of the TV because I can't even think anymore, or you know, whatever it is when you feel drained. Being around them just uplifts your spirit. It raises your vibration. You feel in tune when you're with them because you're vibrating similarly. And it's not that one is trying to bring the other up or one is trying to bring the other down. You're just synchronized. The 5th way to recognize your soul family is when you're with them or you're talking to them, it seems like time doesn't exist. I remember talking to one of my soul family members when we had first met. I think this was like the 3rd time we were hanging out, and we were in her room and we were talking, and as we were talking, I lost all sense of time. I forgot that time existed. I could remember if I needed to be somewhere that day or do something at a certain time. We just got so deep into conversation. I almost felt like there was this energetic bubble around us and we were shielded from time. Like nothing else was going on in the world. It was just the two of us talking and hanging out. And I don't feel that very often with people. And I told her that during the conversation, and she was like, yeah, I feel the same way. Like, what is time? And the same thing with a friend I have the long phone conversations with. We'll look down and we'll be like, oh my goodness, it's been 5 hours that we've been talking. We're like, it feels like it's maybe been an hour. Time is weird. It just slows down, or it feels like it doesn't exist at all. So the 6th way is that they're very supportive, and it almost seems like they always know the right thing to say when you're down. I know in some circumstances we don't know what to say when someone's going through something that maybe we don't quite understand because maybe we haven't gone through it, or it's just so awful we just really don't want to say like maybe something cliche or try to cheer them up if they're not wanting to be cheered up. But I feel like with my soul family members, anytime I'm down, and when I get down, I don't usually tell that many people or really talk about it at all. I'll either mention it over the phone or I'll talk to them in person if we're hanging out, or I will send it in a message online. And I'm just always so astounded by how amazingly supportive they are. Each and every one. And they always seem to say the right thing that just picks my spirit up. that resonates with me so much. Something that I may have known, but I just really needed to hear that day. I really needed a reminder. And their approach to it, their tone, their sensitivity to it is so loving and so supportive. It's like that every time. I don't feel like I'm being judged. I don't feel like they're trying to tell me how I feel is wrong or what I'm doing is wrong. They're just there with unconditional love. The seventh way and the final way is, even when you haven't talked to them or seen them in a long time, whether it be days, months, weeks, or years, it feels like when you reconnect that you pick up where you left off and no time has really passed at all. I feel like most people have experienced this with at least one person in their life at a certain point. So I don't feel like I really need to explain this one. I think it kind of already says everything in itself and just the statement. I feel like you don't constantly have to be in contact with your soul family, and you may not be. You may not, like I said, you may have never met them, you may never meet them, you may have only met them once, or you don't see them very often, you don't, maybe some time goes by since you've talked, but you always seem to get back in contact at some point. It's not awkward or anything, you just start picking it up and just talking and catching up, and it feels like that time that has passed doesn't really affect your friendship or your relationship. And I just want to say, of course, no one is perfect, and even though your soul family is your soul family, that doesn't mean that you may never feel maybe annoyed by something they said, or kind of irritated or frustrated or impatient. We're still all human, and we have those experiences with everyone. You don't have to agree about everything, but I believe when you do have a disagreement with your soul family, it's usually pretty peaceful, and you can agree to disagree and be open-minded and listen to each other's perspectives. And the last thing I want to say is, maybe you haven't met any members of your soul family yet, and that's totally fine. But if you are interested in meeting them, if you want to manifest meeting them, of course you can use the basic principles of law of attraction. I will link the playlist up above and maybe in the description if you want to know more about the law of attraction or techniques you can use to manifest them. But the number one thing I have to suggest for attracting your soul family is to become more in alignment with who you truly are. Because when we don't really know who we are or what we really want, and we're just doing things because society expects us to, our parents expect us to, and we're just kind of following the norms, even though we feel differently. Like, I don't really want to be a lawyer, I really want to be a photographer. And I'm not saying that you should just quit your job without having another job or go into something that you don't have experience in yet. What I'm trying to say is, first, be very open and honest with yourself about what you want and who you truly are and what you like, what you don't like, and be authentically yourself. Show the world your true self. Show the people around you your true self. Or at the very least, do things that feel like they're in alignment with you. For instance, I know in high school that can be the toughest years for children because they're kind of transitioning from being a child to an adult, and they haven't quite figured out who they are yet. And so maybe they've decided that maybe they go into being a jock because it's cool and they feel like they'll make more friends. But what they really want to do is be in the drama program, like be in theater, but that's not considered as cool, maybe. And so they have this version of themselves where they pretend to be into things that they're not really into in order to have friends because they don't want to be alone. But if you're not being the truest version of yourself, if you're faking it, you're not going to have real friends or real connections, I should say. When you start being honest with who you are, even just to yourself at first, you will start attracting people who like you for the real you. And those people most likely will be in alignment with their true selves. Alright everyone, that is my video for today. If you have any more tips that you've picked up along the way of how to recognize your soul family, and if you feel called to do so, please share them in the comments. I would love to know. And until next time, I will see you all in my next video. Bye everyone.